in the process, and we are live. Wonderful. Happy Sunday, everyone. We welcome you here on this Sunday, September 7th. We are with Mr. Kambiz Hakim. We are continuing with this three-part series. We are on our second session of the three-part series, discussing the purpose of creation. We welcome all of you to look at the first session of this series where we've started on this pamphlet. You can find it also on clearwaterbaha'is.org, the PDF to download for your free use. We welcome, as we are going through this purpose of creation series, that during the matter that we are discussing, that you ask your question simply on Zoom. Raise your hand. You'll be called on in Zoom, or in the comments of your video stream, please leave your comment there. Now, of course, we're going to be discussing questions that are directly related to the Baha'i writings that we are discussing. And we want to help everyone understand a bit more these subjects. These questions on these subjects will help us very much. So with that being said, Mr. Kambiz Hakim has put together this beautiful pamphlet called The Purpose of Creation. We'll be continuing this second session of the series. So we are now on the current page. Again, we welcome to all of you here to look at the YouTube channel, Clearwater Baha'is, the Baha'i Center of Clearwater on Facebook, and of course, subscribe. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Kambiz Hakim. We have the slide up on the page that we left off.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Dear friends, I'm glad to be here with you today. We discussed last week certain aspect of this booklet which related to love and God's relationship with humanity, God's essence which surrounds the creation, and the purpose of the manifestations and the relationship to humanity. Today, even though we spoke last week a little bit about this, I'm referring back to it so that, because this is the beginning of conversation for today. This diagram relates to the relationship between the soul and the body. This is something that majority of humanity is not aware of. It's important to know it and understand it. Now, before I begin with this, are there any questions from last week that we can talk about and answer before we start on this? Was everything that I said was clearly understood?
Well, I think that some people joining may not have the familiarity with the last session, so maybe a quick recap would be all right. There's a lot of unique concepts, and I'm not saying we're going to cover everything from last week, but maybe a recap of how we got here.
Then to do that, let's go back to the first diagram, Jeremiah, page 9. Okay, very quickly reviewing what we said last week. You see here the two circles, inner circle and outer circle. The outer circle represents the essence of God, the soul of God, which surrounds his creation. God, through his love for humanity, created us, provided everything in this world for us, for our existence. And also he created us with our soul, which is eternal, which our souls lives forever and progresses to all the kingdoms of God. We talked about the 4 kinds of love. Was the love of God for humanity that created us, And since we cannot directly know God, is that we know God through his manifestations, who are his reflection within the kingdom of creation, since God cannot in his essence enter into his creation. The example Baha'u'llah had given is the painter and the painting. The painter puts in within the painting all its attributes, but at no time in his essence can a painter enter into the painting, because if he could do that, he would be painted. He's no longer the painter. Therefore, since he cannot do that, for us to get to know God is through his manifestations, and it's through the manifestations that the bounties of God comes to us. Through them, the love of God comes to us, the revelation of God comes to us for our existence and our progress. Then the second is God wanted to be known and to be loved. Therefore, he gave us certain tablets, certain writings for us, how to live our life, how to worship him. That is our love for him. And in Kitab Aqdas, the most holy book, Baha'u'llah, this is my understanding, Baha'u'llah refers to the first duty prescribed for man is the recognition of the manifestation of God for day and age we live in, and obedience to the laws. He says these two things are inseparable. The third is the love he wants us to have for each other. Also in the hidden words, Baha'u'llah has written that God wants to be loved above all things. That means above your mother, your father, your children, your brothers, your sisters, your uncles, your aunts. He wants to be loved above all things. Again, as I mentioned, my understanding of definition of love of God is obedience to the laws. That means every time that we have a relationship with each other, it has to be through the love of God. And that means through obedience to the laws of God in our relationship. Otherwise, Abdul Baha called it, if two individuals, they think they love each other, outside the love of God, that's called fascination. It's temporary. One day you think you're in love, next day you're out of love. It's not long lasting. But the people who love each other through the love of God, that love is forever, through all the worlds of God. And the fourth love is the love God has for his own creation. It's like a painter looking at his painting and admiring his painting. That's the fourth kind of love that exists. Anything outside these four loves is just fascination, has no reality. So in a short sense, we covered what we talked. Of course, last time we talked in depth about all this, but today we short review of it. Now, if you may go to page 13, please. You see, every one of us, we have a reality or material existence and our soul. There are two circles. The lower one represents our body, mainly our brain. There are 5 powers that the physical body has: sight, hearing, sound, touch, and taste, through which we perceive. These are the powers of the physical body. And we all have our own soul. And the powers of the soul are cognitive, affective, and volition. Now, the cognitive consists of thinking, understanding, memory, and imagination. These are the powers of the soul, not the body. On the affective, we have our feelings, intuition, motivation. And also we have the power of volition, the free will, the ability to make decisions. These 3 things are absolutely the powers of the soul. Abdul Baha call the connection between these two as common faculty. This is all from some answered questions. That connects the relationship between body and soul. Now the example which is being given regarding this relationship is the soul is like a sun and the body is like a mirror. The sun is not in the mirror. The sun is in its own place, in its own kingdom. But it reflects itself through the mirror by its rays. The rays of the sun reflect itself on the mirror, producing the heat and the light of the sun. Now, our purpose in this life is to cleanse the mirror of our heart to such extent that the sun can shine in its highest degree. That's the purpose of this life. That means turning to God through obedience to the laws of God, through love of God, we acquire all the virtues that we need to acquire in this world for our existence throughout all the other kingdoms of God. Now let's talk about the soul a little bit. Baha'u'llah says the soul of human beings is unknowable. What does that mean, is unknowable? That means we will never see it. We will never know what it's made of. Okay? The only way that we know each other, soul is like the driver, the body is like the car. Okay? Everything, our reality is our soul, not our body. The soul is unknowable essence. We will never ever for all eternity ever see our soul or know what it's made of. Therefore, since that is not possible, the soul manifests itself through a form. Each kingdom that we live in has its own elements. And the soul functions through the elements, through that form that exists in that kingdom. In this world, our body is made of the element of this kingdom. Our soul functions through this body. In all the worlds of God, the soul functions through a form made of the element of that kingdom. No two kingdoms have the same elements. Every level of existence, every kingdom has its own elements. I will read to you from Abdul Baha. This is from the Star of the West, page 37. Abdul Baha has said, the human reality in the other world has no physical likeness. Nay, rather, it has the likeness of the kingdom, which consists of the harmonious elements of the realm of the spiritual kingdom. You see, every kingdom has its own elements. And whatever other kingdom that we are born into after here, a form is given to us that we function, we grow spiritually until such time that God allows us to advance from a lower kingdom to a higher kingdom. The elements, as I said, the higher kingdom is different than the lower kingdom. Therefore, what happens? That means the form that you've been given in the other world to exist through, to function through, you have to leave behind. When you go to higher level of existence, a new form is given to you through which you exist and you progress. We all know that sometime when we get old, we die from this life, from this world. Now, in the hidden words, Baha'u'llah on page 23 has written, O son of man, the light has shone on thee from the horizon of sacred mount, and the spirit of enlightenment hath breathed in the Sinai of thy heart. Wherefore free thyself from the veil of idle fancies and enter into my court, that thou mayest be fit for everlasting life and worthy to meet me. Thus may death not come upon thee, neither weariness nor trouble. Here Baha'u'llah refers to dying, death. What does actually death is? We know the soul never dies. The soul is eternal. Therefore, death is only the change of form. It's changing your clothing from one design to another thing. You leave behind the lower form and you acquire the higher form. Until such time, this is from Gleanings, page 157. When the soul attaineth the presence of God, that means when the soul enters the Abha kingdom, it will assume the form that best befiteth its immortality and is worthy of its celestial habitation. So you see, that's when death no longer exists. As Baha'u'llah has said in the Gleanings, the form is given to you that is yours eternally. Now, the opportunity which we have in this world is that through obedience to the laws of God and love of God, we are able directly from this life to go to Abha kingdom. May death will never visit us. And the form that will be given to us is eternal. Otherwise, if we are born into any lower kingdom than the heaven, Abha kingdom, we will progress in that kingdom until such time, through the mercy of God, we will allow to leave behind the existing form and acquire the higher form of existence. Okay, any questions so far? Have I been clear in what I'm trying to say? There got to be some questions, some comments.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, it went back to the 4 types of love. What
Yes.
was the 4th one?
The 4th one is the love of God for himself.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Through the mirror of his own creation.
Thank you.
Yes. The things that I'm saying, is it clear? Because I want to know.
Yes.
Yes, so far.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the other thing that I have to share with you, the other worlds of God are also wealth exist. Wealth exists in all the worlds of God.
Okay.
That's why in Baha'u'llah's writings, he writes about detachment from this world and the next.
When you go into the to the next world, you go into a level or a station where you are comfortable with what you have attained in this world as far as spirituality and progress. So you go into a place where you're comfortable, where God sends you, and then from there you can progress to the higher kingdom.
Yes. Because God, through his mercy, he won't put you someplace where you cannot, sustain yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you take a child from one school, let's say from the 3rd grade, you don't take him and put him on a 7th grade in another school.
No, you go
You
into
put
a
him back
level.
in the 4th grade to the level that you can continue
That's
and
right.
learn and progress. That's through his love and his mercy.
Right.
So depending on how much we acquire in this world,
In this world, you attain the
in the
next.
next world, we continue further development.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah, good,
Right.
very good.
I'm going to read for you a little bit, as I'm saying, the wealth exists in the next life. You see, in the next world is not that much different than this world. We continue learning, we continue working, we continue socializing. You know, everything that exists in this world, the reality of it exists in the next, but on a higher level of existence. It's not that much different. The elements are different. We have a greater understanding of what's happening. But in reality, as Abdul Baha says, it's just a continuation.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I'm going to read a little bit from this praise from Tests and Difficulties from Bob. Thou knowest full well, O my God, that tribulations have showered upon me from all directions. At that, no one can dispel or transmute them except thee. I know of a certainty by virtue of my love for thee, that thou wilt never cause tribulations to befall any soul, unless thou desirest to exalt his station in thy celestial paradise, and to buttress his heart in this earthly life with the bulwark of thine all-compelling power, that it may not become inclined towards the vanities of this world. Indeed, thou art well aware that under all conditions I would cherish the remembrance of thee far more than ownership of all that is in the heavens and on the earth. You see, here the Bab refers to ownership. You see, if there is no ownership, there is no attachment. We only get attached to the things that belongs to us. So wealth exists in all the worlds of God. Even Baha'u'llah in his writings has mentioned that the best mansions in the Upper Kingdom he created for his loved ones. Of course, I don't know how those mansions look like, but again, we can have some understanding of what Baha'u'llah means. That means the highest level of existence. And as a matter of fact, in the fourth valley, Baha'u'llah mentions the station of the concourse on high, which is incredible. One has to read and reflect on it. Baha'u'llah says, for this is the realm of absolute command and is free of all the attributes of earth. The exalted dwellers in this mansion do wield divine authority in the court of rapture with utter gladness, and they do bear a kingly scepter. Scepter, as you know, is a representative of a king, the power and the might of the king. On the high seats of justice, they issue their commands and they send down gifts according to each man's deserving. This is the power and the station of concourse on high. And the other thing that, to me, I believe, you know, we have the Baha'i institutions in this world. Every kingdom of God has its own institutions. Here is the beginning of this process, this world. But in all the worlds of God, these institutions functions on higher and higher and higher level. Now, when you read the seventh valley, what is the highest valley? The seventh valley is the station of absolute nothingness. What does that mean, absolute nothingness? It means by the time you reach the seventh valley, there is nothing of yourself is left behind. Everything that you possess and you have are the attributes of God. And one of the analogies which has been given regarding understanding this is if you take a piece of iron, put it into a fire, it gradually starts gaining the attributes, the qualities of the fire, and leaving behind its own attributes. What are the attributes of iron? It's cold, it's hard, it's dark. What are the attributes of fire? It's luminous, it's hot, and it makes everything soft. By the time that metal is in the fire for longest, it will acquire all the attributes of the fire and loses all of its own attributes. Okay? That means there is nothing left of its own, of itself behind. But the moment you take that iron out of the fire, what happens? It goes back to its original condition. What it means, this fire is the love of God and obedience to the laws of God. That is the condition under which absolutely we have to live every second of our life. The moment we walk away from that, we go back to our material existence, which is nothing more than animal existence. You see in this diagram, the soul and the body. The only thing that the soul under these conditions understand is the material existence. Only cognizant of material life. And what does it look for? It looks for satisfy its hunger, satisfy its greed, sexual appetite, greed, ego, using other people for its own advancement. All the animalistic qualities, it comes from the material existence. Now, if we move to diagram page 21, please. Thank you. You see here the two bottom Circles represents again the body and the soul. But then there are other further. Now, one thing I have to mention before we go to this diagram, as we were talking about the powers of the soul, that the cognitive, affective, and volition belongs to the soul, not to the body. You see, the physical things, physical attributes, through the use of the brain and through the common faculty, the information is passed on to the soul. Soul analyzes it through its cognitive, affective, makes a decision, and passes that decision through the common faculty, through the brain to the body, and the body reacts. Okay? In this case, brain is only a transmitter and a receiver. Brain doesn't do thinking, brain doesn't do feeling. None of these brain does. Transmitter and a receiver. If information doesn't go from brain to the soul, neither can we understand nor can we feel. That is why when you go for operation, they give you anesthesia which numbs your brain. When that happens, information is not passed to the soul to feel or to understand. That's why the doctors can do the operation without you feeling it. And then when the operation is finished, anesthesia removed, gradually feelings and understanding, this connection becomes connected again. And you begin to understand and feel what was done to you. At that time, you start to feel the pain of what was done. Now, neurosurgeons, when they work on the brain, sometimes a portion of the brain that relates information, it doesn't function. So if it doesn't function, the soul is not cognitive of it, of what's going on. What they do, they repair that part of the brain so that information can be passed to the soul. And soul can become aware of what's going on. Any question? Any comments you have, please mention. Please, let's talk about it. See, the doctors, even to this day, they think it's the brain that does all this stuff, which is not. Because otherwise, when we die, the brain dies. If all this information, cognitive, affective, volition was part of the brain, when the body dies, brain dies, all that will disappear. Then there is nothing of you left. But when the cognitive, affective, and volitional property of the soul moves to other worlds of God and takes all this information with it. You'll never forget the people you loved in this world. Everything that you learned, you take with you. All your memories you take with you. Everything goes with you. Okay? Only good things goes with you to the next life. You see, in this world, we have good and bad. It gives us the arena to choose as free will and be accountable for our deeds. But in all the worlds of God, is only good exists, there is no bad. That's why Abdul Baha mentioned is a safe approach to God. In the next world, effort is required. but progress happens through the mercy of God. Okay? And give you an example. In a classroom, you have 10 kids. Some of them learn everything that the teacher teaches. Some learn 3/4, some learn half, some learn quarter. There is no bad here. Everybody's learning. Everybody's moving in a positive direction. But when you compare the lower students to the higher students, they're falling behind very rapidly. Therefore, in the other world, their effort is required. We have to work. The real work starts in the next life. But there's a lot of joy in the next world. The true joy, happiness exists in the next life. And from Baha'i understanding of heaven and hell, it all relates to consciousness, degree of consciousness. You know, people of Baha in the Abha kingdom, or whoever else is there, are cognizant of everything that is happening in their own world and everything below.
Right.
And they're like the leaven, Baha'u'llah says, that leaveneth this world of creation.
Yes.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And as I read from the Seven Valley, through the power that is given to these individuals, that everything that must happen in all God's creation takes place through them. They carry the scepter of kingship.
Mm-hmm.
They command. Baha'u'llah says, whatever they say, it will be. But whatever I say, it is. This again is in this fourth valley.
Yes.
All right. Imagine to what heights we can grow, to what degree of existence we can reach. While this humanity is meshed with all this nonsense in this world, the greed, the egos, the hates, destruction. For what? For dust? Something that doesn't even belong to you.
Mm-hmm.
You have it temporarily for a period of time. You don't even own it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why all these calamities Baha'u'llah has mentioned is happening, will continue to happen until humanity awakens. Baha'u'llah says, suddenly shall appear that which shall cause the limbs of mankind to quake. And then he says, then and only then will the nightingale of paradise warble its melody. But that doesn't stop us from teaching the faith and helping other people to understand the reasons. We are responsible to do our part, which is the minor plan of God. Baha'u'llah handles the major plan of God. We don't have to worry about that. That's not our job. You see, going back to this diagram, you see on top you have the Holy Spirit, which is the Spirit of God manifested through his manifestations. And through the centuries, these manifestations of God have appeared, bringing the word of God, the revelation of God to humanity for the education, advancement of humanity. Each one of these manifestations have brought a revelation to this world according to the capacity of humanity in this life, to the extent that they can comprehend and live their life by it. Again, just like simply like school. Kid goes to the first grade, learns, goes to second grade, the teacher changes, but the subject matter continues, then goes to the third grade. At no time you can say third grade is better than second grade, because it's not. But you can say it's more advanced, because the capacity of the student has increased. His ability to understand has become greater. And this process is never ending.
Mm-hmm.
All eternity, God, through his mercy, will send his manifestations to humanity for its advancement. Now, the other thing is that the fundamental teachings of all religions is one and the same, will never change. But the social laws that pertains to our relationship changes according to day and age we live in. Now, this takes us to the seventh valley. What it requires to search and find the truth, in the hidden words, Baha'u'llah talks about purity of heart. To recognize the truth, it requires purity of heart. When the soul searches after the truth, through God's mercy, eventually he will find it. And he will start on the journey on that seventh valley. I'd like to read a prayer on the praise and gratitude from the book. Okay. You see, this is important. When we read prayers, we really should meditate on what it is. It's just not words. You know, God is telling us how things are. This is the first prayer on praise and gratitude. All praise, O my God, be to thee, who are the source of all glory and majesty, of greatness and honor, of sovereignty and dominion, of loftiness and grace, of awe and power. Whomsoever thou willest, thou causest to draw nigh unto the most great ocean. And on whomsoever thou desirest, thou conferrest the honor of recognizing thy most ancient name. Of all who are in heaven and on earth, none can withstand the operation of thy sovereign will. You see, this is a bounty that God gives to the individual who truly seeks after the truth. Opens the door of understanding. It's a gift. And it relates to purity of heart and motive. Purer the heart, the greater the advancement, spiritual advancement. When the soul recognizes the manifestation of God through the spirit of faith comes into existence and starts to reading and understanding the revelation of God. Just reading and understanding by itself is not sufficient. That is the beginning, but that's not everything. The important part comes putting it into practice. When you put these teachings into practice, It's when you begin to spiritually grow and advance. Instead of your face being turned towards material things, your face turns to spiritual things and spiritual advancement. You know, we all call ourselves Baha'is. What it really means, we have recognized the source. But we have to become Baha'is in deeds. If we truly live a Baha'i life, everybody else wants to know what we have. We constantly talk about teaching. If we truly live a Baha'i life, we cannot help but to be extremely, extremely happy beings. And that's what the whole world is looking for, genuine happiness. Since they don't know where to turn to, and their face is turned towards the material life, they think wealth is the answer. But if the wealth was the answer, how come all these, stars, actors, actresses, musicians, all of these people who are loved and they're millionaires or billionaires, how come at the end they commit suicide on drugs, alcohol, and other things, and they're unhappy? Because when they get to that stage, they realize it's nothing but an illusion. I'm not denying that certain amount of wealth is required for our existence. We work for it to have a dignified life. But that's not the happiness. Happiness is internal condition, is a spiritual condition. No amount of money can bring you happiness. Can bring you comfort, but not happiness. And we Baha'is, we must reflect that genuine happiness in our life every day. Then you don't have to teach people. They will come to you and ask you, what makes you tick? Why are you so happy? I want it too. Give it to me. But we have to read the writings every day. You see, in the beginning of the Hidden Words, the book, this also is from the Kitab Aqdas also. It's from Kitab Aqdas. Baha'u'llah has said, recite ye the verses of God every morning and evening. Whoso reciteth them not hath truly failed to fulfill his pledge to the covenant of God and his testament. And whoso in this day turneth away therefrom hath indeed turned away from God since time immemorial. Fear ye God, O conquerors of my servants. Baha'u'llah. Why did Baha'u'llah say this? Because keeping yourself immersed in the writings and understanding it, you can put it into action. If you don't know it, how can you put it into action? And also remember, like that piece of iron in the fire, if you take it out, it goes back to its original condition. The fire is the fire of love of God, on obedience to the laws. We must keep ourselves in this fire. Sometimes this fire becomes painful. Tests and difficulties are painful, but it's created for our growth and advancement. We grow and advance through tests and difficulties. You know, a student at the end of the session, the term, they have to give a test, final test. That's not for the teacher to know how much the kids knows, for the kids to know how much they know themselves, to know themselves better. And through this test, they learn, and they make more effort toward progress. God knows us better than we know ourselves. Concourse on high, they know us better than we know ourselves. Baha'u'llah said so. They know you better than you know yourself. So the whole purpose is for us to know ourselves and to know what we have to do next to become better. Any question? Any comment?
Kambiz, there was a question in regards to online the reference of how when we pass away from this life, we're not actually being reincarnated, correct?
No
We
reincarnation.
okay.
We
Just wanted
continue
clarification.
progressing through all the worlds of God. In Baha'i faith, we do not believe in reincarnation. But let me clarify that a little bit better. Our reality is our soul, not our body. Our soul moves on to other worlds of God, okay, for its advancement. But our body goes under the ground and turns to its original elements. Everything goes back to its original elements. And the body, the elements of the body becomes used up within this earth for regenerating everything that is given to us through the earth. Gets recycled. But our reality is our soul, which moves on to all the worlds of God for its advancement until eventually it reaches God from Baha'i writings. What does it mean, reaching God? It means reaching the station of seeing and being with the manifestations of God. All the manifestations of God are in Upper Kingdom. And in the gleanings, Baha'u'llah says, when we reach there, we will converse with the manifestations of God. They will talk to us. They will ask us about our life on this planet and all the suffering that we went through. Imagine that, going there in that world to see Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, God, Baha'u'llah, all the manifestations of God, Zoroaster, Krishna, Buddha, they all reside in Upper Kingdom. And of course, their station, one other thing I have to mention what I remember, Baha'u'llah says the worlds of God are infinite in numbers and infinite in range, in gleanings. Within the kingdom, there's infinite condition of progress. Until such time, through the mercy of God, He lifts you from that level of existence to a higher degree of existence. Okay? Now, in this world, our families, our wife, our mother, father, brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts and uncles, and whoever else. But that's not necessarily true in the next life. Baha'u'llah says the people who are on your level, your station, spiritual level, and the other world becomes your intimate family. Your life is intimately involved with them. If in this life, a husband and wife or a children spiritually progress and are the same level, they will continue throughout the worlds of God together. Otherwise, that's not the case. In the other world, you're separated by the station, your spiritual station. Now, there's one other thing Baha'u'llah has said that if you reflect on it, as we said, the worlds of God are infinite. Baha'u'llah, in one of his statements, he said his wife is his consort, she's his consort through all the worlds of God. That means Abha kingdom is not the end. Okay? But as far as we need to know and understand is to get ourselves to Abha kingdom. What's beyond that, hopefully we'll come to understand when we are in the other worlds of God.
Kambiz, I apologize for having to interrupt you, but
No problem.
unfortunately, I'm having a technical difficulty. I have no power, and so I'm about to lose power on this session. I'm going to have to shut down. I apologize to everyone
Oh,
for this.
no.
And we do have one more session next week, and Ali will make sure that we can possibly extend that to make up for this. Again, I apologize to you,
No
Kambiz,
problem.
and to the audience for this.
Well, I was almost finished anyway, so we can pick up the rest next week.
Thank you,
Oh,
sir.
Thank you all for listening to me.
Yes.
You were wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you all.
Yeah, and I have a question in chat.
Okay. Let's
Why
see.
don't you keep the question till we come
Yeah.
next week, then ask the question.
Next week. Thank you all.
Okay.